Well, welcome back to the podcast this week, the biggest week in the last 12 years in the Catholic Church. Marilis, Pineiro is joining us. Many know you as at XNet on the Run on Instagram. Is it only on Instagram or is it other places too? That's where I
It's only
followed
on. Hi. Yeah, it's only on Instagram right now. I've thought about getting on other platforms, but I can barely keep up with Instagram. So, just there for now.
Yeah, I can understand that. Maybe that's part of my problem too, is I'm trying to, it's like, oh, Substack, it's like the shiny things. Substack's interesting for,
That's
today in papal
trending
history.
right now.
Yeah, but Instagram, it's big. Yeah. So thank you for joining us. This is very exciting. We've, I think, been mutual followers for quite some time. And I was just, kind of processing the news on, it was Monday morning in the US, about 5 or 6 hours. Well, no, probably 8 or 9 hours after Pope Francis actually died. A little less time since the news had broken, and you had already posted a bunch of stuff. Giving I appreciated the initial caveats as you're reading news or listening to people. Please don't listen to the crazy people. Listen to the Catholic Traveler, who I also follow, who's also great.
He's amazing.
And yep, and I think somebody had shouted you out, and you had reshared it. It's like I wholeheartedly agree with this. And then reached out, and you were happy to come chat about all things Pope Francis, all things conclave, which is, as listeners to the show, as you know, one of my favorite things to talk about. So so before we get into all of that, just a little bit of your background. We can tell listeners who you are, where you came from, how you got connected to the Vatican, to Pope Francis in the first place.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in New York City, went to college in Washington, D.C. at Catholic U. And it was while I was in college that I started seriously discerning religious life. I'd always felt kind of like a pull towards religious life, but I avoided it for so long. And in college, I met a bunch of sisters from all different orders and really wanted to take discernment more seriously, and did end up entering the convent. So I ended up dropping out of college, finished later, but dropping out of college because, when Jesus calls, you drop everything immediately and go.
Yes.
And joined a Franciscan community, thinking I would have a very quiet sister life. My my dream life as a sister was to teach 4th grade in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
No way.
That was, I was like, it's going to be great. I love kids, I wanted to be a teacher. And Jesus had completely different plans for me. So I went through the novitiate, made temporary vows in 2014. And the mother that I had made vows under, she had decided, you're going to go finish school to be a teacher. And so I was in school at Benedictine College, loved it there. And on Thanksgiving break, the sisters that I lived with on campus and I went back to the provincial house. And by then we had gotten a new mother. And so new mother pulls me into her office on Thanksgiving Day. And I was like, am I in trouble? What did I do? And she, literally, I will never forget this day, hands me a box of tissues before she tells me the news that I was going to be getting transferred. And I was like, what is going on? I just did not see it coming. And she was like, you're going to be transferred. You're going to be working for the church. And I was like, what am I going to be doing there? And she goes, you'll see when you get there. But you do know that, I know, right? She's like, you do know that the Holy Father will be making an apostolic visit to the United States. I'm like, what's that got to do with me? And
you're about to find out.
Yeah, she's like, you'll see, and I was like, well, what do I finish school? I was so just, how do you take the news? But I also had very much the rose-colored glasses of, I just made vows. I'll do anything for Jesus, And, and I was like, how did this even happen? And she said the Apostolic Nuncio, who was Archbishop Vigano at the time, had called asking for a sister. She didn't tell me specifically what he had asked for, but since she was newly mother, she had asked the mother like 2 terms before her for who to send, and that mother was like, send sister Emanuela, which was me at the time. So that's how I ended up at that assignment, finished up my semester at Benedictine, dropped out of school again to go work for the Vatican. And it was a wild ride. I mean, I never in a million years would have ever imagined ever having any kind of interaction with the church, with the Vatican, with Pope Francis, like getting to work and serve him directly, with the Apostolic Nuncio, like, you know what I mean? All these things that like little me just had not any aspirations for. And I might seem pretty extroverted on social media, but I do like, I'm actually pretty introverted and like my little bubble. I don't like to schmooze. I don't like to socialize much. Like, so this really kind of like stretched me in many ways to have to interact with like all these people, important people, quote unquote,
Yeah.
all over, you know, from different walks of faith and heads of state. And just, it was a crazy thing for me to be doing at 23. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
23. Yeah, golly.
yeah.
Well, and yeah, what was like your first week in Rome like? Because you were in a habit, and I mean, having
Yeah.
been in Rome, priests and nuns are everywhere, but I'm sure it's more unique to be a sister walking around in Rome, as you know, I
Oh,
have
for
priest friends.
sure.
You know,
For
what was
sure.
the what
Like,
was the first?
well, everybody's really nice to you. I think, like, honestly, the first few months were just like a daze. Like, I just was like, how am I even here? I'd been to Rome before, a few times before, as you know, with my family, and when I was in college before religious life, I'd gone to Rome a couple times, but it was definitely like, it was very interesting. I think it really hit me as a sister. Like, this is where the seat of Peter is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is where Peter died. And then, you know, for me to find out like things like where the obelisk is at St. Peter's in the square is not actually where he died, but to be taken around to like where it happened, kind of behind over by the, what office is that? I'm blanking on the Scavi office.
Yeah. Oh,
Where you
yeah.
can get your Scavi tickets. Like, that's actually where the cross, you know, where Peter was crucified upside down, and just like all the things of like the succession from Peter on, and then just the magnitude of like the magisterium and the church's bride of Christ, and just like all the things that like I just never really paid attention to, or just didn't take the time to delve into, so didn't understand, you know what I mean? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was just, yeah, it was, everything was very new, but then also like learning how to be a sister, because I was still very newly professed. Like, yeah, I went through the novitiate, but being a novice is very different than being a professed sister, so it was a lot happening all at once.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, and there's just probably a certain attitude. Obviously, nuns are sinners too, and are normal
For
people, you
sure.
know. But
Absolutely.
there's just like this general assumption that like nuns are levitating instead of walking around.
No,
It's just like
the
this kind
nuns
of
are
thing.
the most savage people in Rome, let me tell you.
I think
Let
yeah,
me tell you, you see a cute little sister in a habit, and they'll be shoving their way. Somehow they'll end up way in the front, closest to, you know, whatever is happening, closest to Holy Father. It's so funny. Right before you and I started recording the podcast, I don't know if you remember this from when Pope Francis went to Naples, and there were cloistered nuns that got special permission to leave the cloister to come, and they like surrounded Pope Francis on the altar. Do you
oh
remember
my,
this?
no, I don't think I saw this.
I gotta send you the video. I was cracking up. But that's just, yeah, perfect example.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, it's probably just using the in a you know perfectly fine innocent way, using the assumption that like, oh, nuns are, you know, yes, please, sister, so nice to see
Yes,
you. They're like, sweet, I'm gonna go get close to the Pope.
for real. And very
Yeah.
much a mentality of like, I'm the bride of Jesus. Like, I need to be
Yes.
up there, you know?
Yes. That's incredible. That's awesome. Yeah. So then, I know you said before we started recording that you can't talk too much about what you did directly. What would be cool?
Yeah.
You should share a little bit more why you can't, which I think is really cool. But then I'm interested to know what. Yeah, how did you end up getting to serve Pope Francis directly? I know it had to do with the apostolic visit to the U.S. and a couple of other
Mhm.
things, but yeah, start with
Yeah.
the. I'm fascinated to know why or what. Yeah, what
Well,
you can share about serving the Vatican.
well, when I first got there, they make us swear an oath at an altar to not reveal like details about what we're seeing and hearing and working on, pretty much. But also, like, this is classic for not just my religious order of sisters, but any order. Like,
Mm-hmm.
your apostolate might be one thing, but end up doing a lot of different things. Like, especially, I don't think it matters how old you are, but for some whatever reason, I guess because I was younger, I was like, oh yeah, she can do that. So it just varied so much what I ended up doing anyway. So it's like hard to say I was in an office, which, for however many hours, because you're doing a million different things.
Mm-hmm. It's like the Lord's NDA.
Yeah.
Like way lamer to just have a piece of paper that says "I will not," and then you sign on the dot. It's way cooler to put your hand
Yeah.
on the altar
hmm
and say,
And with
"Lord,
the
I
caveat
promise."
of like not anything going against your conscience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah. Totally. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So then,
Yeah.
how did you end up getting to serve Pope Francis directly? It sounds like that was more or less how you ended up in Rome in the first place to help with
Yeah.
that. But what did all
Well,
that
my
entail?
right. Well, my sisters had long been serving the Holy Fathers. Um, they first were assigned at the Apostolic Nunciature in DC in I think like 93 or something like that,
Oh, cool.
and have since like served popes. Um, so that was pretty much how I just ended up happening to be the sister, one of the sisters that got to be there. Um, one of the like main things was for the apostolic visit to the United States from in September of 2016 for the World Meeting for Families in Philadelphia, but he also went to DC and New York on that visit, and a lot of my interactions with him were around that visit.
Nice. So this is what I'm most fascinated about because you hear these
Yeah.
stories about when John Paul II came and
I have
he's,
stories about that too.
oh, really?
Not
Interesting.
not my own, but from
Right.
like ones that sisters had shared,
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I
and
mean, like,
Benedict.
yeah. So Jason Everett had in his book the one where he's, being steered away from chapels because they knew that would throw the schedule off by an hour.
Yes.
And then he like hunted out where the Eucharist was and pointed and then gave the little finger wag and then went in and like threw the schedule off by an hour anyways. But I'm
Yeah.
fascinated to know what little anecdotes that you have that you've heard from the sisters that you experienced yourself from that trip because it was incredible. I mean, I was I guess I was an adult. I'm thinking John Paul II. Sorry, I was in college when Benedict came.
Yeah.
But I remember watching that when Pope Francis was here, and didn't really have the fascination with the papacy that I do now.
Mhm.
But still, as a Catholic, you're the popes in the U.S. And I remember people remarking it's the most positive week of news in America
Oh,
in we don't know how long, because it was just the
really?
Pope kissing babies and waving, and everybody's happy that he's there, and all these things. So yeah, so I mean, feel free, unspool as many stories as you can think of. What are some of the ones
Well,
that come to mind?
the first that comes to mind is because I just saw a priest post on Instagram. A priest friend of mine posted how when the Holy Father, Pope Francis, was in, I think, either Philadelphia or New York, they like had begged the guards to give him flowers that they had, and one of the guards finally relented and was like, write a note to go with the flowers, and so they did. And I was telling Father, I was like, the Holy Father would read through all those notes. Like he did every
Wow.
night. He would stay up so late. Stay up so late to read through, like, and I don't know how meticulously he read through them, but he really like looked through all the letters, children who sent him pictures that they had drawn, and he would go through all of them, and flowers that he got, he would give to Our Lady. Either to Our Lady in the chapel at the Nunciature. We had borrowed the statue of Our Lady of Lujan, from the Argentinian embassy to put in the chapel. Cool. So he would either bring it to her, or he'd bring it to a Marian image at wherever he was going that day. So like Michelle Obama had sent him flowers, and those were the flowers that he brought to the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. Oh, cool. That he put in front of the mosaic of the Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception mosaic that's at the shrine. It's like little things like that. Or when he went to New York to bring to the Our Lady, and also to the 9/11 museum, I'm pretty sure. The 9/11 memorial. Okay. He brought flowers to there also. But I remember, like, people are always like, I bet he doesn't even look at those. But he did. This one did.
That's incredible. Well, you'd hear the stories of him just randomly calling some guy.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, this is the Pope. I got your letter. It's like, what the heck? Who does that? How much mail he must get?
He would invite people over. Like, just call them and be like, come over.
Oh, I remember I worked at this summer camp around the time, it was a couple years before, but when he got elected, I think it was a couple years before that I'd worked there. But I remember talking to our bishop at the time. I lived in Montana, and I had known him for a long time. And I said, "Oh, you should invite Pope Francis to come to the camp to visit." He said,
might have.
He might. He was the kind of guy who would,
and he might not give a heads up about it either.
Like, right, yeah. Oh, gosh.
For the U.S. visit, anybody that came over to have an audience with him or visit with him needed to go through the Secret Service. Like, the Pope coming to the United States receives the highest level of security,
Oh, sure, I'm sure.
So, which I thought that was really cool. Like, I'd never seen anything like that. But, so anybody that came to visit, like, we need to get their social security numbers, like, all this information so that they could be cleared by the Secret Service. But he just invited people over without doing that. So then, like, they get mad at us, Like, I was like, I didn't even know they were coming. Mm-hmm. So it was funny. Like, I can kind of laugh about it now.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, I mean, and it's in keeping with his, like, South American personality, Argentinian personality. Because what was it? It was like within a couple months of him being elected, maybe within the first year sometime, he's driving along some road, and maybe in St. Peter's Square, I forget exactly where. But there were some Argentinians with a mug of yerba mate tea, and they handed it to him.
Drank it.
Yeah. And before the Swiss Guard could react, they're like, what are you doing? It could be poisoning. He's like, my people would poison me. Who would do that?
No,
it's very innocent.
And he was very, like, I mean, I don't know if it was because I was a young sister, you know what I mean? Like, but he just was not super serious about those little things like that. So one time at dinner, I was very tired and grouchy at this point because he didn't follow the schedule at all. And so, like, dinner Italian time is very late usually anyway. Oh, yeah. Like, you start at 8, but I think at this point it was like 9:30. I was very tired, but also, like, the sisters, we got up at 4:30 every morning for prayers. So I was very tired. Holy Father's eating dinner. And he goes, "What's next?" And I'm like, what do you mean what's next? Like, in my head, I'm like, you want to do something else? Like, what do you mean what's next? And I said, bed. You're going to bed. I'm going to bed. Everybody at this table is going to bed. Everybody at this table. Apostolic Nuncio is sitting across from him looking at me like, you've lost your mind. I was like, we're going hilarious. To bed. He started laughing. He starts chuckling, like, laughing. And I'm like, this isn't funny. Then I get aggravated. I'm like, this isn't funny. This is not funny. Like, and he goes, no, I meant the next course. Like, what the next course in the dinner was? I was like, oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And there's a sister, like, watching this whole thing from the dining room door. There's, like, a little glass thing, like, dying laughing. because she can hear and see all this going on. But I just, little things like that. Like, he just didn't take it super seriously. Like, he was very much, and I think too that was really my first experience, and probably only experience, of like seeing the humanity of the Pope. Like, everybody, typically has this notion that he's so different and so much holier than all of us, but he just was very human, like very human, and just, I mean, I was still like always agape, like when I'd be down one end of a hallway and he was down the other, and he would just be waving, and I'd be like staring at him with my mouth open, and I just remember one time our butler was like, "Wave back, that's the Pope," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, hello." I was just like, "Who's he waving at?"
Who?
But just,
Oh,
very human.
yeah. How
Yeah,
incredible is that? Yeah. It was a couple things come to mind. The Chesterton quote, if you've heard it, angels can
what's
fly
that?
because they take themselves lightly.
Oh,
So I
I
love
love
that one.
that.
Yeah. And
I'm gonna
then
start using that.
yeah, it's so good because I mean, you start taking yourself too seriously. If the Pope can laugh
He
at
didn't.
a grouchy young nun who is busting her butt,
Yelling at him.
but is really tired and is sassing the Pope, if you can laugh at that instead of like getting annoyed or something, cast her out or something like that, like you would imagine a Pope or
Yeah.
a head of state doing. If he can do that, then I think we can probably chill out a little bit too. Yeah, I always like that, the charm of him, because I mean, the things that always end up getting brought up regarding the Pope's humanity are bad things. It seems like, oh,
Right.
he got mad at he didn't want people kissing his rings. Like he might have just like been creeped out, or might be a germaphobe or
Yeah.
something like
Or
that.
like just wanted some space. Like he,
Yeah, yeah. But to hear things like that are good, and then to see that it's a man who happens to be the Pope instead of the Pope trying to be a man. So I feel like a lot
Right.
of times you see people in that sort of a powerful role, not
Mhm.
even, I mean, far lower down the ladder, people with
Right.
roles of power who are, I mean, it just inflates their ego or whatever it is. But the best ones, um, yeah, tend to be the ones who like don't forget that they're just a guy.
That was very much him. And like I don't know if you saw my post, like I was like, we were both in a really bad mood this day, and he's not smiling in the
I did.
photo at all.
That was great.
And that was him. Like, he would come home if he was tired. He'd come home because all the sisters would line up to greet him, especially on the apostolic visit, at the door to greet him. And there were times he just didn't want to say hello, and he like wasn't like all like his happy peppy self because he was
Hmm.
tired and had just been with thousands of people
Yeah.
for the last several hours. And so when I think back on that, like that's how I would be, and I like that he was completely himself, especially when he was at home.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that you think there's probably some grace that the Lord provides to expand the capacity,
For
because
sure.
I mean, because you just have to do that as the Pope.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, everybody needs sleep. Everybody needs rest.
Yeah.
That's really funny though. So that was during the visit then
Mhm.
when that
Yeah.
happened. Nice. So
Yeah.
what other sorts of things, cuz it sounds like you were around him a lot, but maybe
Mhm.
not having the opportunity to sass the Pope just a little bit. Not too many of those, but you were generally around him. What other kind of things do you remember
I'm
from that?
trying
That
to
was 10 years
remember.
ago
It
already.
was 10 years ago. He was very diligent about the mass, like celebrating his mass every morning early. I want to say it was like 6:30, and it would be, his private mass. And it was very solemn. I remember them just being solemn and reverent.
Mhm.
But those were some memories. I'm trying to think of what else would have happened with the Holy Father.
Things that don't jive with what the trads think of Pope Francis.
The reverent, his masses were reverent.
He
They
also,
weren't
yeah.
some like Pachamama dancing liturgies, I'll tell you that. They
Fake
were
news.
very reverent,
Yeah.
solemn liturgies, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I remember my first mass with him, I was like, again, like that reminder of like the humanity of the Pope, but then as Christ, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I just, yeah, that's what sticks out in my mind. But yeah, he was prayerful. Oh, he had such a big devotion to Saint Joseph. I think a lot of people know this,
Oh
but he
yeah.
really loved Saint Joseph. Like really loved Saint Joseph. Kept holy cards of Saint Joseph in his breviary that was like falling apart. I was like, you need a new
Wow.
breviary.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like thick, you know, because he had so much stuff that he would put in there, either holy cards or like notes from people or whatever. I snuck my vow card in there.
What?
Like when you make vows, the sisters would make, you know, these like little holy cards with like our saint or our patron or like whatever quote they chose for me. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure mine, because my feast day was the Annunciation, so I'm pretty sure mine was like the, you know, Fiat mihi secundum meum. But I snuck my holy card into his breviary. I don't know if he kept it, but it was
I'm
in
sure he
there.
did. Should call Cardinal Farrell. Hey,
Like, did
do
you
you have
just
his
see my
bravery?
holy card in there?
Yeah, can you check?
You see a Sister Emanuela?
That's incredible. So the apostolic visit in the U.S. and you also mentioned the visit to Cuba. Did you go to that, or
Yes.
did you just help plan it, or how did that?
Just, yeah, I didn't go to Cuba. That was solely like him, probably his translator. Well, he speaks Spanish, but like most of his entourage was security, both
Mm-hmm.
gendarmerie and Swiss Guard that would travel with him. So
Mm-hmm.
when he would go to a nunciature, you know, because he would stay at embassies around the world, wherever, depending on where he would visit, the residents of those embassies would need to move out so that he could move in with his guards,
Oh
and
man,
everybody else would need to stay in hotels.
wow.
Yeah.
Not a bad reason to
And
be put out of your room for a few days.
yeah, they would, and they'd have to, you know, do all the security stuff to clear everything. But for Cuba, it was just him and probably some press and his, for sure, security.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Because, oh, this was really funny. Because when they arrived in DC, they had all this laundry that they hadn't done, and including the Holy Fathers. And so it was just like all this laundry. And I remember the sister that was in charge of the laundry was like, how are we going to get all this done? You know? And so they brought it, and I went with them. They brought it to this like Korean dry cleaning place in DC. And they're looking through it all, and they're like, oh, this is, you know, when do you need this? And we're like, tomorrow. Like,
Jeez.
you know,
Wait,
like 2 days from now.
when you say a lot of laundry, what are we talking?
Like suits, like the guard, like Swiss Guard and gendarmerie suits, and like shirts, you know, like everything that they wear. But then like um the Holy Father's cassock,
mm-hmm.
and like clothes that he wears under the cassock.
So we're talking like dry cleaning needs,
Yeah. Oh
not
yeah, dry
just
cleaning.
toss it all in a laundromat
Well, no,
washer.
and I think because the laundry machine at the Ninja Tour probably like they couldn't do it all in that short period of time. But then also they're like, this is the Pope's, you know, you can't just, they wanted it to be really nice. So then we bring it
Don't
over,
wash it
we
with
bring
the
it all over.
Cardinals,
I know.
or
And
it'll
they're
turn
looking,
pink.
for real. And they're looking through it. And then they get to the Pope's cassock, and they're like, and the TV is on. They're watching the news, like the coverage of the apostolic visit. And they're like, they pull out the cassock, and they're like, is this the Pope's? And we're like, can't say, cannot confirm or deny. And they were like, start, you know, like they start screaming, like, start screaming. And we go back. I'm probably like 2 days later, I don't remember. And on the walls, they had taken pictures with the cassock and then printed it and put them up on the walls
They had taken pictures and
already.
printed them out.
And then they wouldn't let us pay for it all. They did all this. They were like, we're happy to do this for the Pope. And I was like, you don't even know if it's for real him, you know, like kind of joking about it. But yeah, so
This should
then I
be
think that sister went back later and brought them rosaries from him that he had
oh
blessed, the
nice.
Holy Father. Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been Pope Michael's cassock for all they knew. But
Right.
no, just kidding. That's incredible. I mean, I tend toward a more I don't know. I call it peasant spirituality, but there's probably another name for it. But like, I tend toward that type of thing. Yeah, sure. That sounds much better. But of just like a very simple, no, I'm going to do this for the Pope. This is incredible.
Yeah,
Don't
they
pay
were
me.
so happy to do it.
Yeah.
They were so happy to do it. And then every time we would meet people, like just them knowing, like either we were part of, working with him or associated with him, they'd either tell us stories that they had of him or like popes before him.
Mm-hmm.
So I met one Secret Service man, and he was so happy to that the Pope that he had been, selected to serve on this visit. And he was like, my wife and I were really struggling with infertility for years and years. And we had the blast, we got to meet Pope Benedict when he came,
Mm-hmm.
and she got and asked him to pray for her to get pregnant, and she got pregnant.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah. So like stories like that, like people just were so in awe, and that is something that strikes me. Like even if you're not Catholic, because he wasn't Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not Catholic,
Oh, he
that
wasn't. Wow.
no, he wasn't Catholic, but he still asked Pope Benedict to pray that he and his wife would get to have babies.
Mm-hmm.
But just like that awe that people have of the Pope, even if they don't believe that he's the vicar of Christ, or the
Mm-hmm.
successor of Peter, or aren't Catholic or whatever. Like, and I mean, look at what's happening now. Just the fact that the entire world is watching the Catholic Church. Like, you can bash us all you want, but I can't name
Yeah.
you any other religious leader when they die. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know anybody else that gets this much clout, as the young ones say. You
Sorry, Dalai
know?
Lama.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I could, I couldn't tell you even his name. Like I had to Google the other day because I was thinking about this. I was like, does he even have a name, or is he just like called Dalai Lama? Like they're all called Dalai Lama
Dalai
when they
Lama.
become Dalai Lama.
Dalai
And I
Lama
looked it up.
Dave.
I was like, oh, he's got
Yeah.
a lot of names. And
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I had no
yeah.
idea either. Mm-hmm.
See, I feel like if I were to go onto the streets of New York City right now and be like, who's the Pope of the Catholic Church or who's the head of the Catholic Church, they'd be able to tell me, but
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't be able to tell me any other religious leader. I mean,
Yeah.
prove me wrong, but let me go do that after this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, you should. Yeah. Woman on the street. Ex-nun on the street.
Yeah, excellent.
Oh, that'd be
But I
good.
mean, just definitely lots of humanity there. Like, and I remember sisters telling similar stories too with Pope Benedict and John Paul II.
Mm-hmm.
Just yeah, like funny little stories. This is a JP2 story. So a sister was bringing him a plate of like cookies and coffee one time, and she was walking up the stairs and dropped a cookie, and she went and like picked it up and was, I guess, like looking at it like, do I just put it back on the plate or not? And here's the Holy Father go, you're just gonna put that back on the plate? Or she goes like, just blow on it. It'll be fine. And she was like mortified. But like these are things that like you just don't think of them in that way, or
Mm-hmm.
with Pope Benedict, he was, Bavarian, and our mother superior at the time was German. She was also German, but from Berlin. And she said to him, she was like, I didn't know that a boy from Bavaria could become Pope. And he goes, like, without missing a beat, he responds, I didn't know there were Catholics in Berlin.
Oh man.
Like, so, like, little things like that. Like, yeah. And Francis was similar, too. Like, he cracked jokes all the time. Or, like, was very easy to laugh. Like, he laughed very easily
Mm-hmm.
at things, as, he was always laughing at me. So.
Keeps you humble at least. That's really good. Not to be a downer, but I'm interested to know, like, I'm interested in your thoughts, given how close you were to him, to see that side of him. Where you fall on, I mean, people's complaints about him speaking off the cuff being the
For
Pope,
sure.
because it's one thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm right there with you. I'm sure like I'm not that worried about it. It's annoying, but the Pope's not, teaching not like changing church teaching or something like that, because
Right.
there's a very defined set of criteria. Maybe imprudence, sure, but where do you kind of fall with stuff like that, or when people complain about stuff like that?
I mean, there were many things that he would say either off the cuff or not off the cuff, like during whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't agree with. Like there were many times that I was like, oh, I wish he hadn't said that, or I wish he would clarify that, or and at the end of the day, I'm like, well, like you just said, this doesn't explicitly or implicitly like go against dogma, like what the church has taught, any of the magisterium. Like this is him speaking as Pope Francis, but like it's not changing any major church teaching. And I think we do need to educate ourselves on like, well, what hold does this actually have, and not just go running after whatever so and so has said about it, what the media has said about it, or what some commentator said about it. And this is why I was like very diligent myself, like both in the convent, both when I was a sister with him, and both after I was no longer with him, and after I left the convent, was to read everything that he wrote, like every homily,
Yes. Oh, yes.
every
Seriously. Oh.
every Sunday Angelus, every like, and it's all accessible for free on the Vatican's website, and I
Mm-hmm.
just was like, and so that's why I'm so adamant about it when people come for me like, how can you like him? He was so divisive. He didn't even love the church. He was pro LGBTQ, pro abortion. I'm like, where are you getting that? Like,
Right.
send me the document, send me the interview in its entirety. Like, I don't want just a grab. But of course, there were definitely times when he did say things that I was like, would very much disagree with. But I disagree with a lot of people about a
Mm-hmm.
lot of
Right. Yeah.
things, and it's like, it doesn't change the fact that I love him as the successor of Peter, as the occupier of the see, as head of the church. And I don't for a second doubt that he was who the Lord had chosen to take that
Mm-hmm.
position, And so I think there's a fine line with, yeah, we can critique the Pope, we can charitably criticize some things, but it's another thing to like bash him and speak ill of him. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's calumny and sacrilege, So
Mm-hmm.
there's a fine line for sure. But I think like, Catherine of
Yeah.
Siena, like I always kind of think of her because she called out the Pope and called him home. And I think there are times when we do need to do that as a lay faithful, but there's a way of doing it without being divisive and confusing. Like I've had so many people in my DMs come to me and say, I'm so confused because you're saying one thing and then this Catholic person is saying another. And I like, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, we of all people, it's like trash talking your own family when we do
Yeah.
that,
Well, like, yeah, and everybody fancies themselves Catherine of
an
Siena,
expert.
but yeah. Well, and to think, one, Catherine of Siena actually knew Gregory the 11th, who was the Pope at the time,
Yes.
and knew he was a man of low fortitude. And like that was, very understandable.
Right.
What do they say? We all like to think that if we lived in, slave times, that we'd be advocating against the end, or for the end of slavery and all this stuff. It's like, no, you
Right.
probably wouldn't have. Like, we like to
Right.
think that we would do all the right things and have all this courage, but like, we kind of are presumptuous in that sense. And also, Catherine of Siena was incredibly holy and did that
Right.
once,
Yes.
in a time of great need. And then here
Right.
everybody is like, oh, Pope Francis needs to be corrected and all these things.
And
I
also
have,
too,
yeah.
oh,
Oh, go. No, no, you go
I
ahead.
was going to say, like, I think often we don't think about where he's coming from in the sense of he's coming from where, with what he knows about that specific thing
Hmm.
that he's commenting on, or saying something about on. So when he would say these off the cuff comments, like he's going off whatever information he has or from what somebody else has told him most of the time.
Hmm.
So like we don't know the bigger picture of like all that's going on behind the scenes. And two, like when people would be like, why hasn't he said anything about this or like come out about this? And they apply this to the church as a whole. Like, the church hasn't made a statement about this whatever disaster is happening in the world, you know? Or the Pope hasn't commented on this, and like, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Like, people don't realize how much the church does and how involved she is in places where people don't think the church is even actually at. You know, and how invested the Holy Father was. And I'm sure the ones before him were, but it's just not something that's talked about. And that's for good reason, you know, to protect people that might be involved. But
Yeah.
that's just.
Yeah. I largely agree. And I have a I have a pet theory that the Lord allowed Donald Trump and Pope Francis to enter like the world stage for similar, obviously extremely different men. Extremely different men.
Yeah.
Like allow them to
Clearly.
enter the world stage at the same time for similar reasons. Because like they were both galvanizers, like unintentionally, I think, because the church at least was gifted with John Paul II and Benedict to, and even Paul VI a little bit, but John Paul and Benedict specifically to keep things like on a pretty even keel. The best philosopher pope in the history of the church, the best theologian pope in the history of the church, for sure. To like come out of Vatican II, keep things from going too far off the rails on a global scale. But then Pope Francis comes and like shines a light on people who, dare I say, like have started worshiping things like the liturgy over the Lord and worshiping like their conception of the church over obedience and humility to their legitimate successor. Because like I sympathize with things like the suppression of the traditional Latin Mass. I'm not a TLM guy myself. I can respect the beauty of it. But like I'm shocked constantly at how do I want to say this? How like emotions can get in the way. And I don't want to minimize either, but like how emotions can get in the way of like what might the Lord be trying to tell me in this situation, because it is painful, but no lesson we ever learn isn't. But I think the beauty of somebody like Pope Francis to come in and be less polished on the things that he says in off the cuff interviews to really like challenge, well, who am I worshiping here? What am I worshiping here?
Right.
Is it myself, my own ideas, or is it like trusting that the Lord founded the church and it's going to endure? And no, Pope Francis is not even in the top 50 of the worst popes in the history of the church.
That's what I keep telling people. I'm like, listen to Popecast. Like he goes through it all. But then too, I'm like, if you are complaining about Pope Francis and you think he's like, you know, anti-Pope Bergoglio, as some people like to call him, or
so silly.
You know, I'm like, the next one you might hate him even more, you know?
Yeah. I've started girding my loins to like, it won't, I'm sure it won't happen, but my former bishop here is Cardinal Supich, because I live in Spokane. So he was in Spokane before he went to Chicago. I'm like, man, I will be in this boat if he gets elected Pope, because I'll be like, shoot, I really don't like him.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is like, it could be way worse if it, you know, like y'all, if you thought that was, you know, had complaints about that. And I totally agree with you. And I say this as somebody who does consider themselves a quote unquote TLMer. Like, I lean very traditional when it comes to the liturgy, and I prefer the traditional Latin Mass. You know, that's where I go daily. But there is something to be said about obedience. And there's something to be said about loving the church more than me throwing a hissy fit because of traditionis custodes. And however the bishops have, you know, taken it. And whatever they're doing in their different dioceses. You know, it's just there's really, and I think because we live in, I mean, I don't know if I see this mostly in the United States because I'm American, and so pay attention more to American voices, but very much a sense of like thinking we all have an opinion and get to have a say and can somehow all be mad about these, you know, the suppression of the TLM, quote unquote, as if like us throwing a hissy fit about it and writing letters. Like, I saw somebody yesterday like encouraging to write letters to their bishops about it. I'm like, yeah, you can do that, but ultimately, again, the church is not a democracy. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, and I think because we very much culturally think that we can have a say about everything, and if we are loud enough and screaming enough about it, that somehow it'll shift
Hmm.
to our way, is just kind of funny to me.
Yeah. It's interesting because I remember in college, when I was still a meathead idiot, like I was still going to church, but like I didn't, I could answer a lot of the answers, but there was no real depth there. But even then,
Yeah.
it's really interesting. I remember one time, it's just like funny what ends up standing out. There was like some Wednesday night mass at when I was in college, and the priest there, great faithful man, was talking about obedience. And I remember as he was talking about obedience, like the need to be obedient to your legitimate authorities, like he was getting almost pissed off about it. Like he was just getting actively worked up about how important it was. And I'm sure
Yeah.
he had some conversation with another meathead idiot college kid, like right before that, that just inspired him to preach on that. But it was very impactful for me to always refer back to that because obviously I am far from perfect in that
Yes. Aren't
realm.
we all?
But I'm thinking, well, I remember not long afterwards, I read a biography of Padre Pio too.
Yes.
And I think this also speaks to like how we need to give grace to like a lack of administrative ability or the ability for underlings to subvert what somebody like the Pope wants to be doing. But Padre Pio was, what was he? He was suppressed for years, wasn't it?
Years. Years. Hmm.
And it came from Pope Pius XII. Like he
Yeah.
signed it, but it was because Padre Pio's bishop was an objectively bad guy
Yeah.
and was jealous of him and said, "This guy's a charlatan. He's faking it or whatever." And Pope Pius XII probably said, "Oh, geez, well, it's your diocese, so." Whoop.
Yeah.
And it was years and years and years, and Padre Pio just didn't fight it. Trusted that the Lord was going to make everything right, and he
Yeah.
did. We don't know who that bishop was now, but we know who Padre
Right.
Pio was, and we know
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, I think about Padre Pio often when it comes to this situation. And again, it
really.
goes back to like, see, like the Pope Pius XII was going off of what he was told,
Hmm.
you know, by that bishop.
Right.
So
And it was probably the only time that he ever met with that guy, or once or twice or
right.
three times. Like
The
the
one
freaking
time, I don't like this guy, you need to suppress him.
right, yeah. It's like in the aftermath of World War II, like Pius Hotel didn't have a million other things going on.
Right.
But I
Right.
also think of Benedict XIII. Have you ever heard of him? Well,
Yes.
you probably remember the episode,
On your
the Pope,
podcast.
the Pope with resting bitch face.
Yes.
Shameless plug. But he was
Hmm.
like he's a servant of God. He's on his way to canonization. Was a holy guy, but was really bad at administration. He was a really bad pope when it came to managing the Vatican, which fine, not everybody's gifted with that, but and the two things can be true at once. So whenever I thought of Pope Francis in that vein, I think of Benedict XIII a lot because like it's very clear Pope Francis loved the Lord and pointed people
Very much.
every chance that he got, like follow Jesus, stay close to Mary, all these things, but was maybe not the greatest judge of character when it came to like certain assignments, and also it's just kind of an impossible job to do perfectly, right?
And I think even more so to do perfectly today when
Oh yeah.
all eyes are constantly on you thanks to the media, thanks to, technology, thanks to information just spreading like wildfire in the split of a second. Um, yeah, I think it's even more intense today than I think it would have been in the past
Hmm.
for the for Pope Francis and whoever comes after him.
Yeah, yeah. Well, on that note,
Yeah.
that was very interesting. I appreciate your thoughts there. On that note, you are still deciding whether to go for the funeral, but you are fully
Yeah.
intending to go to Rome for the conclave. So, yeah, I don't
Yes.
know. Share a little bit about that because did you say you were in Rome for the conclave with Benedict,
No. So
or no?
I wasn't. I was still a novice when Pope Benedict resigned
Okay.
and was there for the I wasn't there for the conclave, but I mean, we were glued to that television in the convent when the conclave was happening. I mean, TV was always on except for when we were at prayers and meals. Pretty much, that's what it felt like. waiting for the white smoke. So I've never been there for a conclave, but I was at Benedict's funeral.
Oh, oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So as soon as he died, I was home for Christmas, and literally as soon as I heard the news, I was like, I'm going back to Rome. I think I got on the flight that day. There were a bunch of Cardinals on my flight. Supich was on.
No way.
Tobin was on.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just remember thinking it was really funny. Like, I was like, oh, they're all here. And then, of course, like, the people on the plane are like, wow, there's a lot of, because they were in their collar, like, their
Hmm.
suits. And people were like, wow, there's a lot of priests on this flight. And I'm like, do you know what just happened? Like, hello. So that was a really beautiful time to be in Rome for Pope Benedict's funeral. I love him. He's one of my favorite popes. I love, love, love him. So it was I really wanted to be there for his funeral, but still on the fence about going to Francis, because I just have been traveling constantly, and I just got in last night from Israel, so I'm exhausted. But
Yeah. Geez,
and
you'd
if I go
literally
to
circumnavigate the globe if you went back to Rome
yeah,
tomorrow.
if I go back for the funeral, I need to leave tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, I've done stuff like this before where I just will be like, I'm going, bye. But we'll definitely be there for the conclave, have secured accommodations. That was like the main thing, because there's so many people in Rome, and I was like, where am I going to
Yeah.
sleep? I'm contacting like sisters, like nuns, like every convent that I know in Rome. Like, do you have a room for little old me and my dog to come to Rome for the conclave? Anyway, so I've found a place that I'll be staying in to, stalk the
Nice.
conclave. I'm just so
Anywhere
excited to
close
be there
to
for it.
like pretty
5 minutes
close?
from the Vatican. 5
No
minutes from the
way.
Vatican. Yeah.
That's awesome. That'll be great.
Yeah. So I'm really excited. I haven't read like too much about the conclave, what actually takes place. Like, I like that it feels mysterious to me.
Hmm.
Um it just seems so ancient. I don't know, there's something like so mysterious and ancient about it, and like I love how it's all done in in the Sistine Chapel. Like, doors are sealed, and how the College of Cardinals all meets and prepares for it, and you know
Hmm.
meets with each other, but then really like pray. Um, One of the diplomats that I used to work with at the Vatican is now cardinal, and so he and I
No
were
way.
texting yesterday, and like he was like, we're all just praying, and like he just really stressed like the prayer aspect, and I know people say that, and they say that this is what the cardinals are doing, but to really know that they're doing that as like the
Hmm.
leaders of our church, it meant, I don't know, it just felt deeper than like reading about it via whoever else is posting about it on Instagram.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and just like how they're taking the time to really discern this before they meet, like before the conclave begins. Um, I think is really cool.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, what was fascinating actually, I can't believe it was the last episode. It was like a year ago. I'm so bad at this. But with on Saving Michelangelo's Dome, about the book, the conclave that
Yes.
elected Benedict XIV, I thought it was really fascinating that they literally turned the Sistine Chapel into apartments. Like, they built
Mm-hmm.
scaffolding, and each cardinal just had a little
Yeah, so that they could
cell.
stay there.
Yeah, basically, like they
Yeah.
literally were just locked in there. At least now it's in the Dome of Sancta Marta, but yeah, still, I think the mystique of that is really neat for sure, and that it's still preserved even now. I think it's even more remarkable that more secrets don't get out.
No.
In
They take it so seriously.
Yeah,
Like, I love how seriously they take it. You know?
hmm
That
sweeping
nothing
for
leaves
bugs
the
and all these
Sistine
things.
Chapel. Right.
Yeah, like
But
they
just
swept for
too, like
actual
how the
bugs back in the
Cardinals
day.
are so like seem so strong in that of not letting anything out of that room. I love
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, because there's like no places, cloistered monasteries and the Sistine Chapel during a conclave is like the only place that the outside world still stays out of.
Yes.
It seems like, and the woods where there's no, but that's always been the case. No, I'm fascinated to know. Yeah, and I'm eager to hear how the experience is, because It's just probably a lot of standing around and waiting, but
It is. I mean, I can't remember how long it took for Benedict for the white smoke. Like how many days from when the conclave began to when the white smoke
I think it was
appeared.
only I think it was only 2 or 3 days. Actually, NBC News of all things tweeted out the lengths of the last
Oh, I need to look at that.
7 or 8 conclaves since Pius the 11th. I think was the first one, and Pius the 11th was like 6 days, and the rest of them have been 2, 3, or 4 days.
Like it'll be wild if it'll be like one meeting and like white smoke. You know what I mean? Like,
well, what's crazy
you
is
never
there's
know. You never know.
right.
I just
Yeah.
or it could take days.
Because
Who was the Pope? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you I forget his name. I've been to his tomb at San Sebastiano, but I forget his name. You would know though. The Pope who the bird landed on his head.
Oh, Pope Fabian.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like we could have a Pope Fabian situation. You know what I mean? Like I tell Mountain, aka the Catholic Traveler, all the time. I'm like, listen, Pope Fabian had that bird land on his head. And that's how they're like, it's him. Like, Mountain, this could happen. You have one of your pigeons. You know how, like, he has that obsession with birds? Or, like, one of his crows? Like, they could be like, it's him.
He's secretly trained
like,
one.
Little.
Fly away.
Yeah, his tomb is at San Sebastiano.
I can't remember if I saw him.
When you were in Rome.
Large credit to my friend, Father Ned Scheidecker, shout out, of the Diocese of Helena. Great guy. Also a guy who happens to be a priest, which I love. It's one of his best qualities. Like Pope Francis, a guy who happens to be
I wish they were all like that, honestly.
So he, when I was getting ready to go to Rome last year, he said, what do you want to do while you're here? There's lots to see. I said, I basically want to see as many Pope tunes as possible. And after that, I don't care. Want to go. I like to, take in all the food and all the sites, and more than I do. And so next thing I know, he sent me a list of all of the churches in Rome where popes are buried outside of St. Peter's Basilica and which ones were buried.
Is it like an official list, or did he write it out?
He found it on Wikipedia, I think was more or less. And he may or may not have, I can't confirm or deny if he was procrastinating from doing canon law homework or not, but he was pretty excited to see it too. But it was really cool. I'm pretty sure we must have seen Pope Fabian's grave. But what was also actually kind of cool, randomly, the Church of San Marco, which is named for St. Mark the Evangelist, in the altar is Pope St. Mark, who was, I think, Pope 15 or 16 or something like that, in Rome. It's one of the station churches, because I was there during Lent.
I've never been there.
Yeah, so it's kind of unassuming, but it's one of the station churches, so it's super old. Yeah, and I'm up there for Mass, and I'm looking, I'm like, oh, there's a Pope St. Mark. I wonder if, and I walk up there and it says Papa S. Marco.
Oh my goodness.
Like, no way, that's him. Yeah, because he's one that almost nobody knows about, it seems like.
Yeah, I don't even know if I know that church.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's San
Marco.
Marco.
In Rome.
In San Marco in Campidoglio, maybe?
I need to look it up. Maybe I'll go when I'm back.
Yeah. Anyways, there you go. Yeah. Little
Pope St. Fabian, because they exhumed his body from the catacombs. And
really?
Or his remains, rather. Mm-hmm. And because he was in the catacombs, and then they moved it to that altar.
That's incredible.
There's like a huge, this is my dog, there's a huge like statue of him carved into the wall.
My gosh.
I'll send you a picture.
Yeah, please do. That'd be great, because it would either refresh my memory or be on the list for next time if I somehow missed it. Is that the one where it was a Franciscan church and there's a big like catacomb underneath the altar? Am I thinking of a different? Is it Saint Sylvester? Maybe is the church that I'm thinking of.
I think that's Saint Sylvester. I think there's an entire catacomb underneath this one though.
Yeah,
it's where Saint Sebastian was, and he's now above. They brought his remains up too, and there's like a ton of other relics.
Interesting.
Up there.
I might have missed that. Because my oldest is obsessed with Saint Sebastian, probably just because he's a boy and Saint Sebastian got shot full of arrows, and like that's epic and cool.
It's not what he died of, though.
What did he die of?
You know that? I forget, but a nurse, maybe a nurse, nursed him back to health after he got shot with arrows. But that's how they
No
like
way.
depict him in art all the time.
Oh, fun fact. I didn't know that. I just assumed.
Yeah.
But so I had to show Leo, my oldest.
Oh,
Leo, you know.
you need to take him next time.
Yeah.
Are all your kids named after popes?
Yep. After all the greats, we're working down Leo, Gregory, Nicholas. It's
I
full.
love it. I'm not laughing because I think
It's
it's funny. I'm
full.
laughing because it's amazing.
Yeah, full
That's
send. So we're
great. I
hoping.
love it. Oh, you need to go to the funeral. I know. Like, or a conclave.
Maybe the next one. Maybe the next one. This one probably wouldn't be in the cards, but
Yeah, it's
yeah,
too,
maybe the
like,
next
that's what
one
I mean.
for
It's
sure.
so sudden, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, that was what
And
I had suspected that. I'm actually working on a post for Today in Papal History about where the popes have died, like who the last one to not die at home, like in
it's
Italy was.
Francis. Oh,
No, well, Pope Francis died at home. He died in his own bed,
yeah.
but it was Pius VI in 1799. He died in France. He was in exile, like
Was
during
he?
Napoleon's.
Oh, I almost said, was he on an apostolic visit?
Oh, no, unfortunately not. Yeah, no, he was in. I think Napoleon was on the march, and then Pius VII, who is one of my favorites, got put in prison like right after he got elected for 10 years, I think, and then was
Oh,
released, was pope for 10 more years after Napoleon fell, and then died in Rome. And all of them have died either in the Apostolic Palace or Castle
or like,
Gandolfo
okay. So
or Pope
is,
Benedict in the monastery where he was.
right. And then Francis is the first at the Casa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean that's right next door to St.
Yeah,
Peter's, pretty much.
right. My
Yeah.
next dog I'm going to name after a pope. You've inspired me.
Yes. Zosmus, Formosus, maybe? No.
Oh, that might be hard. That might be hard for people to say. We'll
Lando.
brainstorm whenever that happens. Leo.
Yeah.
What?
Lando is always the one joke.
Lando.
Yeah, so maybe we talk about this. I know we've been going for about an hour, so we can probably start to wrap it up here. But no, there was anytime people are like, oh, what's the next pope's name going to be? I'm thinking Lando the Second.
I want one of them to
Why
take
not?
Joseph.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's going to be another.
Saint Joseph, who's the patron of the church.
Mm-hmm. I'm shocked that like Joseph, Thomas, Dominic have never been used before. I don't know if it was just there was enough Urbans and Innocents. And...
like all these great. That's always a fun part, is when I just pray I'm at St. Peter's, like when the white smoke comes, and then to be in the square when the Carmelengo comes out,
mm-hmm.
And says, Abemus Papam. Like, I think I just start crying.
Yeah. Oh, how could you not? I probably will on TV,
yeah.
While we're watching on TV.
I met Cardinal Farrell, but I also got to know the Carmelengo before him, who's since passed away. I'm blanking on his name. God forgive me. But he had really fun Pope stories. If you could ever get Cardinal Farrell on your podcast
maybe you can help me make that happen.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But
that was,
and I remember being like, do you still... This is like, again, my childlikeness of like meeting the Carmelengo and like should be, having some kind of a serious conversation. I'm like, do you still hit the Pope's head with a mallet when he dies? Like,
there was a guy who just wrote an article about that. Weird Catholic.
I asked him that.
Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. But I asked him and he looked at me like, what? And I'm like, do you still hit his head with a mallet and say, blah, 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 are you alive? Or,
we just say his name now.
and he's like, no, we haven't done that for centuries. I'm like, oh.
The silver hammer was what it was.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because it was, yeah. Oh, I was going to say in that article, the guy said it was because people could legitimately get buried alive.
Right.
It would be unresponsive.
Thomas à Kempis,
mm-hmm.
who wasn't Pope, but got buried alive.
Yeah.
But, or two, like when they take the Pope's ring off and crush it, like, how does that happen? Like, how do they actually do that? You know what I mean? Because it's not like we have video of this or photos of this being done, but that's the first thing that they do after he's officially been declared deceased is they take the ring off and crush it. And that like all that fascinates me. And then too, didn't like Pope Francis kind of make some changes with the like them closing the casket and stuff, like all that they. I
Yeah,
remember recently
I'm trying to remember all.
they
Yeah, he
announced it.
just updated
He
the
made
papal
some
funeral rites
changes. Yes.
last year or something like that. So it's the Pope was normally buried in 3 caskets. It was like cypress,
Right.
oak, and one other one that I can't remember. And then the
Yeah.
Pope would be on a platform
Right.
in state. And he's like,
Right.
that's weird. Just put me in the box and take the lid off, please. And then I
And
think,
that's what they're doing.
yeah, I think they're doing it maybe as we're recording this right now, or they
Mm-hmm.
just did it a few hours ago. And then the funeral is going to be, the spirit of the funeral is going to be as a simple pastor instead of as a pope,
Pope.
as a head of state.
Yeah.
Which like
Which is what he
I'm
wanted.
kind of bummed out about that, but
I
I
know.
can understand the sentiment behind that, to think like, okay, even the Pope will die and his body will decay and he'll go before God,
Yeah.
like all of us. I like that.
Mm-hmm. And I know he wanted a very simple, whatever you call it, at Mary Major, just
Oh, the
Francis
tomb.
Feast.
Yeah.
The tomb,
Oh,
yeah.
so where I stayed was in the Monty neighborhood, which is right down the
Okay, yeah.
street from St.
Yeah.
Mary Major. I'm thinking, oh man, no. If I stayed in that
Well,
same
next
place,
time
I'd
you're in
be,
Rome, you be right there.
yeah. But that seems like it's been pretty common, the simple tomb, because Benedict
Yeah.
John Paul's
And
different
John Paul.
because he's John Paul. They just made the decision for him, I think.
Yeah, and they moved him.
Yeah. But Benedict, Paul the Sixth, John Paul the First all have pretty
Yeah.
basic tombs, which I can appreciate.
Yeah,
I just
I
love the
can
papal
too.
tiara. Gosh.
I do too. There's definitely something to be said about all the pomp and circumstance.
Mm-hmm. The
You know,
feathered whatchamacallits, where they
that
fan the
thing that they
Pope.
would carry them on in.
The Sadia Gestatoria, which like I can understand all the practicality. It's like in the traditional liturgy, like the maniple that the
Yeah.
priest wears drapes over his arm. It's like it's a sweat cloth that they just really made really, really ornate, which is great.
Right.
And then the vestment is because Rome was super sweltering in the summertime, and so they didn't want to wear a whole big
The whole
chasuble,
thing.
which I understood. But like we made. Oh, and what was there's like holy pincers if a fly flew into
Yeah.
the chalice, and
Yes.
oh my gosh, now God forgive me, I can't remember what's the square called that they put over the chalice after the
I'm
consecration.
blanking. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking too.
But like whatever that is, there was probably lots of
Yeah.
flies in the church back then because hygiene
Back
wasn't great.
then, even now in the summers in
Oh
Rome are terrible.
yeah, it's all those things like came out of practicality, but now pious practices. So
More lace, more
I like,
grace.
yeah, exactly. Amen.
We
Saint
love all
Teresa's
that.
mom was a lace maker.
Yes,
Yeah.
Saint Zelly. She
Mm-hmm.
was. But I'm excited. I'm excited about the conclave. The like 22 that they're saying are like the main, have the
That's
greatest
22 now.
chances. Well, there's
Yeah.
like 20. Yeah, apparently, according to there's like a College of Cardinals website that breaks
Oh
down
yeah.
each cardinal. And there's 22 papabili
Mm-hmm.
that they're called. So it's like,
Yeah.
what if?
I
How do you know? But what
yeah.
if what if it's not one of the 22
Yeah. Pope
that ends
Francis
up
was like 30th in the odds or whatever it
right?
was, when in reality he was the second largest vote getter in the 2005 conclave, and
Right,
nobody knew.
with Pope Benedict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it'll be a little bit longer this time, because even the
I'm
college.
hoping. I mean, of course, it would be crazy if it was like couple days. But I'm kind of hoping for a long one to build up the anticipation.
Yeah. Can you imagine having to rip the roof off the Sistine Chapel if it takes 2 years? Like Viterbo. That was the
That would be
story.
wild.
It took 2 years because I think it was like the French and the Italians were at odds with each other, and the citizens of Viterbo literally ripped the roof off of the building where they were in conclave, and then reduced their rations to
Why
bread
did
and
it
water.
take so long?
I don't remember the exact circumstances, but I think it was basically just warring factions of cardinals, and so they
Okay.
couldn't come to an agreement. And I think that was one of the times that the conclave rules got tweaked. It was like 1059, I think, was the first actual year of a conclave, and not just popular acclamation or a family heirloom of the
Mm-hmm.
Roman nobility. But
I'm
yeah, very fascinating.
excited.
So
I'm
I'm
just
hoping
excited.
for 5-6 days, because what are the
Yeah.
mainstream press going to talk about if it takes 5 days?
They're
I want to
all
see
parked
that.
outside.
Yeah, jeez.
They're
I'm
all
embarrassed
parked
for them.
outside. I just,
Yeah, they should call
yeah,
me and you and the Catholic
for,
Traveler instead of
yeah.
trying to opine on
Mount,
their own.
right? Mountain, I told him, I was like, you need your own, like, tent over there.
Yeah,
You know, I only
with
watch
this.
him and the Vatican News.
Yeah, and the Pillar.
Because
Pillar's
everyone,
pretty good too. Yeah.
oh, yes, the Pillar is
Hmm.
really good. Ran into them at Pope Benedict's funeral at
What,
dinner.
really? Oh, no way.
Yeah, we were all eating at Pope Benedict's favorite restaurant on Borgo Pio.
The
And
German place.
yeah, the German place, like
Yeah,
in honor of, Pope Benedict.
that's right.
I
That was
hadn't
one of
met
my
them
last.
before.
That was one of my last dinners in Rome. Was, yeah,
Yeah.
Father Ned took me there. He says it's Pope Benedict's favorite place, but that's
Hmm.
crazy. But you ran into them there of all
Well,
places.
no, I didn't. Yeah, and I didn't. I mean, I didn't know them. I just kind of like you. Like I subscribe and read all the stuff. But Mountain happened to be there, and he goes, "Do you want to meet the Pillar?" And I was like,
No
"Yes,
way.
like absolutely." So
That's
that's how I ended up
awesome.
running into them. But that's like the fun part of being in Rome during this time. Is just running into people like that, and
Hmm.
it's exciting. Like I love that we have all these traditions in the church.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
That's
agree.
worth being there for or keeping an eye on. Like the
Hmm.
the translation of the rite of translation. I don't know if you saw any of that this morning. From
Where
when
they
they moved
moved him.
Scotty, that was so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. Chanting the Litany of the Saints.
Yes.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
and so when I was
Yeah.
thinking about when they chanted that at his ordination, like
Oh,
as a
yeah.
priest, when they're laying prostrate and they sing that, they chant that, and
Hmm.
I just was like, it's like such a full circle moment of
Yeah.
his priesthood.
I can't think about that stuff too much for too long, because then, like, I get, yeah, a little emotional, which is good. Probably that's probably the proper
It's
response.
okay. I was crying
But
yesterday. I was fine, like when
oh,
the news broke. Like I was like, he was 88. He'd been sick for a while, not just with this last stint at the hospital, but he like had been declining for some time.
hmm,
Um, and so I was like, it was his time, whatever. And then yesterday, when I was at the airport, like waiting to board, I was texting with Mountain, and suddenly I just remembered that story I told you of like him waving down the hallway at like me,
uh,
and I lost it, like was sobbing at the airport, like one of those like crying in public, you don't care who sees you, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really sad all of a sudden.
yeah,
I was
man,
like,
and
I
yeah,
he's really not gonna be, he's not there anymore, you know?
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I had that moment of seeing. I didn't. I don't. I haven't been reduced to tears. I wouldn't like. Haven't. It hasn't gotten me super emotional, because I mean, I didn't know him, obviously,
right.
but like it hitting me was like seeing his body laying in um the Santa Marta Chapel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man, yeah,
Where
he's dead now.
he celebrated mass there every day when he was home,
Hmm.
every morning.
Yeah, yeah, that's very beautiful. I like. There was Dr. Chad Pecknold, who I think might have been my first or second guest ever on the Popecast, if I remember right. But
Okay.
he posted a little. I think he's a convert. I didn't know that, but he posted a little snippet of an article, I think, that he wrote. He wrote about how it's kind of a marvel that the church, how it's people always talk about her in terms of her failures, rightfully so, in a lot of ways. But there's
Mm-hmm.
still a grandeur and a mystery to it, and a beauty to
Yeah.
it. And like if you dive into that too much, like my grandma's funeral a couple of years ago, happened to be the same church that she was baptized in and received her first communion and got married. And then
Wow.
63 years later, however long it was getting buried. Like all in the same spot.
I love
Like how many
that.
places, like
How
I've,
many people have that too?
yeah. But then, like in a grander sense, the church, like if you are in front of the Eucharist, in front of the tabernacle for your baptism, for your marriage, for your ordination, if you're a priest, for your burial, like
Yeah.
there's witnessing all the way along. Yeah, that's very beautiful. I'll send you. I was gonna make a reel of it, but there's a poem that Leo the 13th apparently wrote on his deathbed
Ooh,
about the
please
death,
send it.
the
Definitely.
death of a
Yeah.
pope. I was like, not ugly crying, but there was something in my eye when I was reading that the other day because it's just like, it's just very, very
Yeah.
moving. All that
And
sort of
even
thing.
too, like, I was on this kind of note, like, I don't know if you read about his last moments, Pope Francis's last moments
Some maybe, yeah.
with his
Refresh my memory.
nurse, like how he waved to his nurse before he went into that, I mean, seemingly short coma, because he died a couple hours later. Like, I was just like, oh, to the very end, he was so himself to the very end.
She rolled him out to St. Peter's, right? She was the one who kind
Yeah,
of
he
made
had
sure that he got
asked.
to go out one more time.
Well, apparently the Holy Father had asked him if he had asked his nurse if he could go for Easter Sunday, and his nurse said, "Yeah, you can." And then things didn't apparently start declining rapidly until around 5 a.m. the next morning, and apparently the Holy Father like waved at him at his nurse before closing his eyes, and then he died 2 hours later.
Gosh. Oh my
You know,
gosh.
just
That just like
but
hits
I
you.
was like thinking like it's so him to the very end, like his humanity, like you said, man before Pope, to the very end, and how he still wanted to go see the people the day before he died, and just to wish everybody happy Easter, then go in the Pope mobile and ride around to greet people. Who knows how terrible he must have been feeling, but he still
Yeah.
went and did that.
When he got rolled out on the balcony of Gemelli Hospital right before he got released,
Yeah.
because he's in his cassock and he's out on the balcony and
Mhm.
waving, and like you could tell he's just in terrible shape.
I know.
But
I remember
then
thinking they're letting him go home.
I know, but then I wonder, like I think they're probably sending him home to die, probably
Yeah.
before too long. But he's waving, like it was just not really much expression on his face, and then he looks over and like you said, in keeping with his personality, he sees somebody. He's like, gives this
Yeah.
big
So
smile and
it's so
point,
him.
and then he says, "I see a lady with yellow flowers." That was
Yes.
all. That was the only thing he said on the balcony, which was just kind of random, but I
Yeah.
thought was just kind of like, "Hey, thanks for bringing me flowers," and that was
Mhm.
all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. Well, we've been going for an hour and 20. I told you we'll just zoom by. I'm excited to hear how the conclave goes.
I will. I'll update you.
Yeah, safe travels
I'll
over
try to
there.
I'll try to send you like a booklet or something from the
Yeah.
mass
Oh,
if
sure.
I go
Yeah.
to the funeral.
Yeah. No, I'd
I know
appreciate it.
I loved your Pope relic episode.
The relic episode.
Of like
What?
Pope
Remind me.
relics. You had somebody on. You
Oh
interviewed
yeah, yeah.
somebody and they were like talking about different like they were a
Um,
pope, he was a priest.
Father Rich Kunst from Minnesota.
Yeah.
The
And he
largest collection of
collected.
memorabilia outside of the
Yes.
Vatican. Yeah,
Yeah.
insane. Yeah, I've been
Not
meaning to
relics,
call him
sorry,
too.
memorabilia.
Some are relics, I think. But it's like a lot of Zucchettos, a lot of untranslated letters, a lot of like kind of random stuff that he's.
I have somewhere in one of my, I call it my like memories box, like things that I keep of letters and whatever. I have stuff from Pope Francis's masses, like his, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name. The like cloth that they use to clean the chasuble or whatever.
The chalice at
Uh,
mass. The
yeah, the chalice, sorry.
Oh
You know what I'm
gosh,
talking about?
this is embarrassing for both of us. I'm gonna think of it as soon as we stop recording.
Same. I'm blanking on it. But anyway, I like kept it.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, very special stuff like that. That's just
Little things like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's
priceless.
here
Good.
somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, Bubba? Anyway.
Well, do you have like a hot prediction for top three? You think it
Gosh,
might be?
top three. I'm like, do I?
And
Okay,
it
top three. I
Cardinals
think
and names, you
Tagle,
could say.
Cardinal Tagle is a
Hmm.
top three. I think. Okay. Also, this is not my like caveat. These are not people I hope. I'm
Hmm.
personally hoping to, you know, be Pope. I just, from what I'm seeing, might have a shot.
Hmm.
Cardinal Tagle is one. Cardinal Pizza Bala is another.
I can't. Yeah, we can't not think Cardinal Pizzaballa. If he picks John the 24th, he'll be Papa John forever, at least for the Americans.
That
Uh,
is such a great dad joke.
oh my gosh. And somebody said Cardinal Pierre Battista Pizzaballa is J.K. Rowling naming an Italian Hogwarts student.
I mean, what a name,
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
you
Okay, and
know?
then three. Sorry, I don't want to get
The
sidetracked.
third, oh gosh, Parolin.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be. There's not a boring choice for Pope, but I feel like
Right.
that'd be a boring pick if they picked him. But it would be.
I think
It
I
would make
just
sense.
because he's Secretary of State, I'm like, I feel like he would be one of the top contenders, as
Hmm.
the quote unquote Vatican watchers say.
Right. Yeah. And then what would you say? Names like the
I
names that
mean,
they'll take.
that
You
they'll
already mentioned
take.
Joseph, I know, but
I know Joseph would be. I just think Joseph would be epic. I mean, he'd be Pope Giuseppe. I feel like he would go with the
oh
Italian.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Pope Giuseppe. Like, wouldn't that be legit?
That
After
would be
Saint
legit.
Joseph, like protector of the church, patron of the church, we need him more than ever.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh,
um,
that'd be
I
great.
feel like another Pius would be pretty cool.
Hmm. They would have
Another
had to have
Pius.
not watched the good Pope or the next Pope, the new Pope. What was that HBO series from like 10 years ago with Jude Law?
I
He
don't
was
know.
Pius the 13th.
Oh, was he really? I
Yeah,
haven't seen that show. I know who you're talking about though, because I've seen like the photos and graphics from it and stuff, but I haven't actually
kind of
seen
like
it.
kind of like Conclave in that it was visually stunning, but narratively not great.
Yeah.
We could leave it at that. But
If it's Tagle, I feel like it would be cool if he. I'm half Filipina,
hmm.
so I just know the Filipinos will freak out. Like I can't even imagine if you can like or not like him. The Filipinos like could care less if they like you or not. As
Oh
long
yeah.
as you're Filipino, they will freak out. And I feel like it would be really cool if he took like a Filipino saint.
Ooh,
So
interesting.
either like
Yeah,
Saint Pedro Calungsod or Lorenzo Ruiz. Like if he took, I mean that would be cool. But
Pope Lawrence.
I just know the Filipinos will come out in droves.
Well, he couldn't pick Pedro because it would be Peter, and there's no Pope Peter,
Yes,
or there's no Pope Peter the II, anyways.
right. And is that like a respect thing? You think why they haven't ever chosen Peter?
That's
Probably.
kind of always
Yeah.
been the assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really funny. Speaking of Filipinos, a Pope Francis moment. I know we're wrapping up, but another favorite Pope Francis moment was when he went to the Philippines and
Oh
he was
yeah.
reading the gospel, where he's like, "Do you love me?" And the people responded, "Yes." Like, and he goes, "Oh, thank you."
I literally just saw that last night. That's so funny.
Yeah, 6 million people showed up when he
Oh
went
yeah,
there.
that's right.
It was crazy. So, yeah, those are my three. Joseph would be like a top contender name. Because I want it to be, but I have no idea.
Mm.
I think Thomas would be cool. Bartholomew would be cool. Pope
Oh yeah,
Bartholomew would be cool.
yeah.
Matthew would be cool. John, like another John. We have John. Was John the 23rd the last John?
Yep. Well, because
Yeah.
John Paul I was he picked because of Pope John the 23rd and Pope Paul VI. So he
Okay.
said we're just gonna
And then we had
mash
John
them
Paul
together.
II. I can't imagine a John Paul III.
Yeah, it'd be. I don't
It
know.
would be.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping not. I feel like JP2 is. I
yeah.
just love him so much.
It'd be like I don't know if you followed NBA basketball ever, but Chris Paul was number 3, and they always called him CP3, like JP3
Oh,
would be.
JP3 would be cool.
It's
Okay,
just
see now I'm coming
it just roll
around.
off the tongue, really nice,
If we have an African pope, like what name he would take, I don't know.
I don't know. Victor the
That would
Third.
be really cool. One of the black cardinals said something really beautiful. I think it was on the BBC. He was being interviewed. He was like, "Yeah, the question of like an African pope or a black pope." And he was like, "We don't want a black pope or whatever. We want a holy pope." And I was like,
Yes.
"Yeah,
Yes.
you tell the BBC."
That's like the most African cardinal thing to say too.
And like with his beautiful accent, just like
Yes.
so well said, so clearly and well said.
Mm-hmm. No F's to give. Like, stop with this.
We want a holy pope.
Yeah. Nice.
Yes.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show. Maybe we'll be doing this again after we have a new pope. I'd be down for it.
Hopefully a lot. It'll be a long time from now.
Yes. Longer than a week. What would be too long for a conclave? 2 years would be too long.
No, I feel like
a couple weeks.
Any more than 8 days would be like, okay, let's wrap this up.
Benedict actually made a rule that I didn't know this until a few days ago. Pope Benedict made a rule that if it goes past 10 days, that the top 2 vote getters are the only ones you can vote for.
Oh, that they can vote for.
Yeah, that they can vote for. So they take the top 2 vote getters and just vote on those 2 until you get 2/3. So I feel like 2 weeks is probably gonna be the max.
Okay, wow. Because every time before that, they would put in a name of who they think it should be.
Yeah, and they read them all aloud. So they write on their little parchments.
I can't imagine hearing my name out loud. What that would feel like.
So I'm almost done with Pope Francis' autobiography. I've read it.
Okay, I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, it's really good. I read it during Lent, and he talks about the conclave and how it's just wild. Like he just was like dissociating, or like his ears stopped working as he started hearing Bergoglio, Bergoglio, Bergoglio.
Like over and over again.
Yeah, because it's 2/3.
Is it a majority vote? 2/3 have
2/3. Yeah. So I think it was he got elected on like the 4th ballot, I want to say, or 5th ballot.
I feel like I'd probably throw up. I just vomit.
They don't call it the Room of Tears for nothing, right?
I've been in there.
What? No way. That's awesome.
Yeah, off to the side of the Sistine Chapel.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd probably. I know. God is good to me. Mm-hmm. He's good to us.
Yeah. What do they always say? God forgive you for what you've done. That's like the line that everybody's supposed to say. It's like unspoken, may God forgive you for what you've done.
Yeah.
And then what do they say? The guy who gets elected has to say accepto, like I accept. I think the camera.
Do they give him a minute?
When they announce the tally, then they applaud.
Oh my!
And I think
I obviously have not even ever seen this, and I get chills just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then being that person, knowing your life will never, ever, ever be the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more story, really quick, because it's a conclave. So Pope Pius X, apparently, because he was like a poor, grew up poor. He said, I was born poor, I've lived poor, I wish to die poor.
I will die poor,
just wanted to be a country priest, country bishop, and then he kept getting elevated. So he got elected pope, and apparently he I don't know if the Room of Tears is named for him, but he legit went in there and was just beside himself. It was what did you get? What did you do to me, Lord? And
poor thing.
Yeah, and Cardinal Rafael Mary del Val, he was a Spanish cardinal, was the coolest name ever. He was not any sort of Vatican diplomat. He had been there for a while, but he wasn't, I don't know, super important. Didn't know Pius X very much. But he happened to be, I don't know if he was one of the ones overseeing that vote or whatever it was, but he happened to be in there and comforted him and gave him a pep talk. And then the first thing Pius X did was make him his Secretary of State afterwards. He's I need you.
I need you
by
in
my
side.
Camp.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he might be a servant of God too. Mary
Okay.
Del is. But anyways, he's just like a lesser known figure from more recent church history. But yeah, worth knowing.
Yeah, that I did not know that story. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm sure there's been plenty of tears and
I can't even
disbelief.
imagine. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can close this one. It'll be
Okay.
more sooner rather than later. Maybe we can plan
Yes.
for after we have a new pope because yeah, this has
Yeah.
been great. Good to
Give you a
good to share all these.
play-by-play.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I want to hear how it was being all the people that you chat with. Maybe keep a tally of countries of people who you run into or something. I don't know.
I will. I'm really excited. I'm really grateful that I can just go and do that.
Yeah, yeah, you can live vicariously through you. So yeah, at xnon on the run on Instagram. Is there anything else you'd like to plug, or where
No,
people can
just
find you before we
yeah,
log
Exxon on the
off?
Run, and on my link in bio, there's a newsletter you can sign up for,
Sweet,
and
I didn't
I
know that.
share a lot via my newsletter. I mean, a lot lately. It's been a lot of like meditations that come to me in prayer. We just had Lent, but kind of things that I don't post on Instagram of like my travels, where I'm at, different things like that.
Nice.
Um,
All right.
living in Italy, living in Florence. I live in Florence. I spend a lot of time in Rome though.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, stuff that you don't see on the gram, you'll probably see on my newsletter.
Nice. All right. Yeah, sounds good. So one more time, at xnone on the run, and it'll be in the description too. But well, thank you so much. Great to meet you finally in person through
Thank you.
Riverside, and
Yes.
safe travels to Rome.
Thank you.
Mhm.